Wayne H. Morris. Wayne's presentation is entitled Digital Scholarships as Partnership. Wayne led the design efforts for the physical, organizational structure, and processes of the Emory Center for Digital Scholarship. He co-leads a group of librarians, IT professionals, and students in developing projects across a wide range of fields, from art to clinical science, in an effort to change how scholarly work gets published, curated, and integrated into teaching. Wayne's research interests include building support for 21st century researchers through blended traditional models of practice, digital methods as part of public scholarship, sustainable digital publishing platforms, technology-enhanced teaching, virtual presence as part of pedagogy, 3D environments in research, and more. So with that, please welcome Wayne H. Morse.
Thank you very much. I'm certainly appreciative of the opportunity to come and speak today as part of the SEFLIN webinar. And today I've been asked to speak about partnerships, building a lot on the previous presenter about how to get this done. There are lots of wonderful ideas, but how does this really happen? I wanted to start by asking if anyone else out there has had this wonderful question of people coming by and saying, I want you to do a lot of things when you only have a small group of resources, be it people or money or what have you. Hopefully there's lots of people that will resonate with because that's exactly what our center was posed with that question and continues to be posed with that question. And I would make the argument that partnerships are one way that we've been able to successfully address that. Today I'm going to talk about our team just briefly, and then about some of the realities we face as a group in creating digital scholarship projects and working with clients, customers, patrons, whatever term you use. Some of the strategies we use that we found successful, and the process that we go through in order to get these projects done. There are some changes, and I'll talk about those here in a while about what is necessary or what is successful in that practice. Also, the partnerships that we have currently, the ones that have been successful, and probably some of the reasons why, and also the impact, because it's all about what happens on the back end, right? What is your impact? How do you measure that? How do you make a difference at your institution or at your library? So our team briefly is made up of what I call scholars in their own right. Many of them are recently minted PhDs, all from different areas of study. We do have librarians on our team. We do have a few IT professionals and some graduate students. We have 13 core members of our team, FTEs, and several graduate students on our payroll as well. And I'll talk a little about their importance in a key partnership for us. The second bullet point here is our mission statement, and hopefully you all are able to see that. We have that's actually developed with our team. It's been revised multiple times.
Sorry, Wayne, I don't mean to interrupt you. I think did you change your slide? Because I don't think it changed on our end.
Okay.
I think it looks like you don't have the view slideshow up. It looks, from our end, it looks just like, if you're going to be editing your PowerPoint.
So let's see.
There we go.
Is that better? All right.
Yep.
Thanks so much. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
So now hopefully everyone can see the second bullet point here that has our mission statement. And one key point here about digital scholarship is that we interpret this as including teaching and research. We see a lot of our faculty members and graduate students who are working as part of our team and as part of the center use their research in their teaching. So to separate those would be artificial. So we blended those together. We actually attended several years ago a group of other centers which this definition aligns with. And the last bullet point here on this slide is one that's key. It's really about open source, creating open source applications, things that are sustainable. It's about empowerment, which the library and librarians have been doing for many, many years, and public scholarship. And again, at the library, that's kind of what happens. public scholarship now is one of those key phrases that resonates a lot with the granting agencies, and is one that I think people can successfully leverage, that has been going on for many, many years. So a little bit about the structure of our organization. We are within the libraries and IT umbrella, but we are our own entity within that. So there's the library, there's all the IT, and then there's our center. And we were created that way from a working group of librarians and faculty because of our ability to draw on the resources from other parts of the organization. So where we have a project that comes in-house, we can have actually the second photo down here. There is a subject matter liaison who is part of that project meeting. There's a faculty member here in that picture as well. There's someone from our Carlos Museum at Emory. And then there's some of our staff members and also a graduate student. So that's a pretty good representation of the way that we draw on other resources. So our partnership with the other parts of our organization are critical to allow us to be able to handle these projects and ebb and flow as the projects come through, and not have to hire people on and then let them all go, or ask someone, you know, for a favor to a certain point where they have to go one way and we have to go another. So it's organizationally done in a way that really helps us get our work accomplished. And you can see also by this back wall, we are transparent, which is one of the other key things to demystify whatever digital scholarship is and the work being done in the center. So some of our realities that we deal with on a regular basis. Of course, limited resources, and that can be either financial, that could be time. Right now, the big choke point for us is people time. There's so many things to do and so much to be done. We have to really prioritize and try to get as a group and figure out how to make this happen. For those of you who are familiar with Moore's Law, and the previous speaker alluded to this, how quickly technology jumps. Every year there's new processing capabilities, there's new power, it's smaller. It allows us to do more things. And in our business, you're never really on a firm foundation. Everything's changing. And if you don't like to change, it's going to be a tough road to hoe for you. Divergent priorities is another reality we have. When we work with faculty, they are in their independent schools, they have their independent areas of study. We have our mission and our mission statement, which we shared. So it's working to try to figure out how those fit together, how we can dovetail those together to get to our outcome. But that's a reality we have to deal with all the time as well. I'm preaching the choir here with the librarians about intellectual property. That is always one of our concerns, or one of our considerations, really. The evolving world of scholarship, digital has really transformed what's happening in the scholarly world. The ability to have something and publish it online. So evolving scholarship and what it is it the interpretation of the technology and the results, or is it just the leverage of these technologies, or is it just the technology itself? All those questions are being addressed right now within higher education, and I would argue beyond, as far as how people what is scholarship and how is that scholarship seen and rewarded. And the last but not least really carries a lot of weight. It's the care and feeding of these digital projects. When I started at this new position here 5 years ago, there was actually a computer underneath one of the desks that a faculty member was running their research from 15 years on, studying the island of Samothrace in Greece. And if someone would unplug that from the wall, then there goes her research. So one of our first hurdles was to try to take that and move it into a more sustainable platform, which we did. It took us about a year, but we did it. But it was not an easy task. There are a lot of predetermined practices that have to be kind of thought of and rethought. So care and feeding is one of the things, because we really want to preserve these things, keep them for others, leverage them for others to use, and the library plays a huge role in that. So some useful strategies that we've employed. Sustainable platforms. I believe, is number one. Answering a lot of the questions I just talked about from the previous slide about how to do continued care and feeding for these wonderful resources once you build them or bring them forward. We found that using open source tools helps a lot. There's a few here on the side of the slide. For those of you familiar with Omeka, which is an online collection and presentation program. WordPress, which is, we do a lot of projects in WordPress. And with the plugins available now, you can really tailor them to unique applications. And Drupal, one of our premier journals, is published on Drupal right now, Southern Spaces. So leveraging these, and there's several others for text analysis and for GIS and map making, and even for 3D applications using Unity, which is the open source platform for that. So there's several different things that we leverage that are maintained by the community. They are open source, and they really help things have a little longer shelf life than things that are very proprietary. We constantly are out looking for methods used by the community. So there's no reason to reinvent the wheel, but there is a reason to make the wheel different. So by looking at what's out there and building upon that, that gives you a firm foundation to move forward and really helps us limit or cut some of our development time and some of the ideas you can see out there, what everyone else is doing, and then build from that. And that's not to say that everything's a carbon copy of everything else, but you need to use what other people have experienced in order to build on that and get a step up on that. This next point about a shared vision of outcomes. Like I said, people come with all different ideas about what digital scholarship is and then what these tools can do for their projects. And we really have to work to try to bring those ideas and visions together. When you put on the hats of a project coordinator, project manager, you have to have a unified outcome or unified outcomes that you're aiming for. And part of this shared vision helps, not only in what that thing is at the end of the project, but how you get there. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit too. Translating each other's languages. That has been something that we've spent a lot of time on since the center was brought together 5 years ago. Since we are borrowing from the library some of their unique skills, the metadata, digitization, the liaisons, we're borrowing from IT in database administration and in storage and network. We have to translate some of those when we start to engage with our customers, clients, patrons, because some of the speak that both of those groups use are not ones that anyone else is really comfortable with or really understands the same way. So we've really had to change some of those languages and present them differently while still maintaining what the core meaning is of some of those. And I have an example for that as well. And practicing empowerment. Again, librarians and the library has done this. I've been in the library for over 21 years now. They've done this since I've been there. It's a little different type of empowerment, but just as we used to talk to people about digital pedagogy, now we talk to them about digital scholarship. Some of the principles are very similar to things we practiced over time. There's just the nuance of changing either different tools or working in a different way or leveraging different methodologies, but there's really not a sound reason to throw away things that have worked, just to build and enhance upon those. So the initial stage of getting all this going is our project process. We really call everything a project, from a faculty member coming to us and asking us to create a map for our publication to a huge project, multi-year, like the Slave Voyages project, which we are working on right now. So we do this so we can really put it into a step process, so we make sure that all our boxes are checked. So it's resourced appropriately, so it's tracked, and so we can ensure that it's aiming towards something at the end of the effort. We use it to really cultivate ideas. So we have all of our staff, all of our graduate students who are out there in their individual departments. They bring ideas to us. Both myself and the faculty co-director of the center, who is a tenured history professor, have been on campus for many years and have many connections. And we're constantly doing outreach, constantly trying to get out to people and let them know the types of things we do, let them know the resources we have as part of the center. And last but not least, the faculty who've come in and done projects with us are out receiving awards and giving presentations and going to conferences. So that all helps bring ideas and projects in. There are some gates, as I spoke of, some kind of controls that limit the number of projects that come in. Some of the other ones that I just talked about was, open source, empowerment, and by having people be part of the active project. So we're not the Kinkos of the world where you drop your things off and you come and pick them back up. You will be part of the project as we go through. So some of those things limit, and I know at our university we're kind of drinking from the fire hose, because if everyone came to us at once, we would be overwhelmed. Maybe that's a good thing. But right now, some of those gates, which are necessary for us to maintain our mission, have allowed us to direct some people to other places, but still focus on a core group. Project workflow and documentation kind of go hand in hand. To be able to document where you are and be able to figure out how you're moving to keep yourself on a trajectory is critical. And that's not to say, and we consider ourselves an innovation center. You're going to make mistakes. You've got to have that freedom to bump your head and back up and try again. And in documenting this and having a project workflow that allows for these things are really critical, because you have to have all parties involved realize that that is part of the practice. When you're innovating, when you're doing these things with these technologies, the technology may be pretty sound and sophisticated and embedded, but when you're applying it in a different way on a new question or a new challenge with text analysis or with visualization of data, there may be a couple of stumbles that you'll have to backtrack and start again. So those things are key to know that that's part of the process, that they may not always happen, but you have to know that they may happen. We have a very easy project proposal process. We have a website with that on a page and 3 or 4 blocks in a Google Doc for people to pull down and submit. We meet every other week as a team to review, and then select the projects that we take in-house, and then select who's going to kind of be the caretaker and work that through. Then we do that on a rolling basis. So right now we're at about 90% capacity, and we're having to tell people whose projects are accepted that we will triage them and we'll put them on the schedule for a little ways down the calendar. So successful practices. As I mentioned, tailoring communications, and here on the right side of the screen we have a business case from our university, which is driven by the IT side of the house. And nothing against my colleagues on the IT side of the house, but some of their terminology that they used are ones that were challenging, let's say, to some of our customers, clients, patrons. One of the things, and I didn't highlight it here, but it starts out with what is the problem? What is the issue? What is the problem? And I'm like, can we change that to challenge or potential? Or so we've had to go in and change some of the verbiage in that, and worked quite a bit with them. And I'll show you an example of that here in just a little bit as well, to translate some of those with still being able to gather that data in order for our projects to go forward, because they are IT based, and we still have to work with our colleagues there to make sure that they're hosted and maintained and cared for. So if we have to gather that data as part of the project or part of the work, we certainly have to have it match in some way what they're looking for. We're just changing some of the ways that it's described, really. Likewise with Dublin Core, librarians understand what Dublin Core is. A lot of other people don't understand that. So we've had to do some translations with that as well. In blending roles, earlier when I showed the slide of one of our teams working together, librarian with IT professional, with graduate student, all sitting around the table working. None of our team, even though they have titles and they are in job families, everyone has to wear multiple hats. And I know librarians wear multiple hats all the time. But I would argue that you would have to have a flexibility and understanding. Not only you in your position, but hopefully your manager or your director would also understand that there's got to be a way that you can blend and do a little more, or learn a little more, or learn other parts of the process in order to make these things move forward. Because I would argue the days of just doing one job and just doing that the whole time are gone in really any type of practice. Always choosing sustainability, and for that matter, accessibility, making sure that projects have a open source platform, that they're easy care and feeding. We actually move a lot of things to the cloud. We use a lot of third-party vendors. So then faculty can, for $200 a year, can maintain this wonderful website, and we can focus with them on doing the ingest and the creation of new elements of the site on the front end. That also clears space for us to be able to do other projects, because if we were taking care of all these projects we've done, we wouldn't have any bandwidth for anything else. Building on our strengths. So at Emory, we have strong African American collection, a strong women's studies group. We have sociology collections. We have the Carlos Museum. Building on those strengths, what you have, what's your collection, what's your expertise, either locally around the city of Atlanta, like we are, or in your own cities, that has really allowed us to step up our game and really contribute in many different ways. Realizing our limits. I spoke of just the challenge we have is that as projects get approved, we still have the challenge of putting them on the books, right? When are we going to have time? When is my GIS librarian going to have time to get off of one project and get onto the other one? So we have to realize that limit. We can't be everything for everybody. We can't accept everyone's unique software application and build it into something, because that's just not a sustainable practice. We can certainly be able to take their idea and move it to a different platform and then suggest that if they'll be open to that. But if a faculty member comes with a special piece of software that only runs under the computer on their desk anymore, we really are going to try hard to move them to a more sustainable platform. And I think that not only helps with the care and feeding, but also helps us to build upon our experiences. And last but not least, translating the terms and practice. So you have to be able to put things in languages that people understand. So here's an example of that. We have, as part of our project teams, we have what we call project coordinators. We can't call them project managers because project managers have a bunch of specialized letters behind their names and titles and certifications. But for project coordination, we actually wanted to be able to have anyone, including faculty members and librarians and graduate students, be able to coordinate a project and be able to see it through and bring an idea into us and make it happen. So we met, part of our team met for over, oh goodness, three months maybe, a couple times a week with the project management, the IT project management office, and translated what their process was into a more humanities-friendly language and process. And this is up on our website now and available for everybody, but actually walks you through the whole phases of a project in a way that makes sense to people outside the IT field. But this is just one example of many. We actually had our subject matter liaison librarian who went through and is managing that project. She went through this class for us. So it was really just another example of how we need to translate things that come from a different area but are critical to getting our project done. And I'm sure you all translate things all the time for people, but I would argue just that this is a key piece of that partnership to make it work, to be able to leverage other people's skills and expertise as part of getting projects done. So the principles of our partnership. First of all, we really have to identify partners, and then we have to have shared outcomes of that partnership. So we have to be able to build together. We have to be able to share ideas and share the way we do things. We have to have members within our team, multiple members within our team collaborate together. So we have to be able to bring those folks together, make them see and work together in a way that they understand what they're doing, they have shared outcomes, and we can blend our group with the IT side of the house, we can blend our group with the library side of the house, we can blend it with faculty members and other folks. So it really has been able to help us to blend those, to make those fit together. The communication is critical, right? Communication is one of those things that you have to be able to share between groups. You have to be able to translate it, make sure we're on the same language. And that plan is really something that you have to work out together. Blending the expertise has really been beneficial to us. So we've been able to build upon subject matter liaisons, metadata experts in the library, database experts within IT, and blend those together to create some really fantastic projects for faculty and really for everyone because of the public scholarship aspect of things. It increases our capacity. I spoke of earlier our partnership with the graduate students. We have almost 30 graduate students on our payroll. Without having them where we can bring them onto a project and they go through a whole training program to get them the skills, without bringing them on and being able to do that, we would have a limited capacity. So that's just one example of us being able to bring them on, have a qualified resource, and then let them go and put them on another project as things ebb and flow. So by working together and blending those and making a partnership with them, we really increased our capacity. And the key element here is to be able to assess and evaluate impact. For all of the projects that we do, we obviously gather Google Analytics. There's several different methodologies out there. The library at North Carolina State started a process by which you'd be able to see how many times people are cited in other scholarly publications. So there's all types of formula being developed. The one site that I spoke of earlier, Slave Voyages, which captures thousands of voyages across the Atlantic from the 1500s to the 1800s and puts all that data online for everyone. That's one of our flagship projects. And for example, that gets nearly 300,000 unique visitors a year, last year alone. So imagine taking that collection of data that was spread all over the world and all over the globe and bringing that forward to having 300,000 unique visitors a year, just for that one site. So that is a critical way that we can evaluate impact. But you have to do it for all this work, because I'm not going to lie to you all, these things take a lot of effort. They take effort, they take resources. So there's no easy pieces to this. It's made easier by the technologies and being able to build upon your practices, but it's work to get these things out and build them and make them successful. And you want to evaluate that at the end. You want to see how those times and how that resource has been used. So the power in partnering, and like I mentioned, you can, the idea of empowerment center, which is what we call our center as well, and which is what the library has done forever, to empower others with knowledge, to empower others with the ideas of the tools and practices of digital scholarship. It gives you that flex capacity. It allows you to ramp up and ramp down and really broaden the expertise that you have in your own group. The wonderful thing also is about exposing collections. Some of our partners that you see here on this page, specifically working with Georgia State, we've really been able to bring forward some hidden collections and bring them out in a form of public scholarship that allows everyone to really take advantage of those and to share experiences. So to be able to go through as a group and work across, not only within higher education, but you see the CDC here as one of our partnerships. Also, you see the Atlanta History Center as one of our partners, UNC Press. So there's different experiences that we can build together and share together. And those partnerships and those strong partnerships are critical to that. So back to impact. Back to, does this stuff really make a difference? The impact can also make changes to how people know and look at things. So the creation of new knowledge, the sharing of knowledge about how to analyze, how to interpret, how to create scholarship, how to have a scholarly view on a question or challenge. Those all come to bear using these tools and methodologies, and as a partnership, as a group. We call people who are not really familiar with what's going on with all these technologies, we call them non-traditional scholars. That could be really anyone. And one of our outcomes is really to engage them, is really by exposing these collections, exposing this work in a scholarly way, to engage these people in different ways. Data visualization is a key way to do that, to let people visually see what happens and then be able to drill down to the data and do their own analysis. Again, with the Slave Voyages site, the site we had to build with a lot of the capabilities to analyze the data on the site itself instead of downloading the data, which many scholars are doing now, and running your own analysis of that. It has to be built on the site because the large demographic of users are K-12 users, and they won't be able to download. They don't have the resource to download and run statistical packages on that. So that's just a different way to engage people. Leverage sustainable practices. And so it's not only just the platforms, but also the practices. Share tools and methods across disciplines, and across, not only across the institution, but even outside the institution to our partners, and then really across the globe now, and build that community of practice. So be able to know your colleagues who are doing wonderful, fantastic work in text analysis, and be able to draw from them and engage them, have them come to your library and speak about what they're doing and see how you can leverage that for your own. So I just wanted to show some what we call partnership successes. I have slide captures for all these, but I just wanted to list them here real quickly. The first one is a unique way to engage these non-traditional scholars. There's a spin on that, which I'll talk about here in just a second. The second one here has to do with a unique partnership we have with other institutions and them creating some really cool stuff with that application. And the third one is really kind of a transformational thing, which we've grown from a library-only application into one that's much larger. So I'll start with this one. The Historical Rural Churches of Georgia is really an effort to capture churches throughout the state of Georgia that are either in possible of being knocked down or forgotten, and capturing not only the physical structure and where they are, but also capturing the stories of the people who were parishioners in those churches and or part of those church communities. So this is they've just been awarded an NEH grant in a partnership that we are part of with Georgia Tech, about creating something they're calling a digital drawer. And so the idea of what it is really a drawer that people can pull out and put in their own memories about the churches, be them textual or images or auditory stories, and then close that drawer and have that be associated with that particular church and that community. So it sounds pretty straightforward. The thing that I believe was a unique hook for the granting agency for the NEH was the idea that with these churches and with the focus on where these churches are and their history and their age, a lot of the people who are going to be depositing into this digital drawer are people of a certain either age or affinity towards using technology. We could argue for quite a while on whether or not anyone is a digital native. I would argue no, but for this particular project, people either don't have access to cutting edge technology, they haven't grown up with it, they're of a certain age, not too far from me, that didn't grow up with it. So it's an interesting demographic, and they've already identified that they want to create this in a very simple, easy way that is straightforward to use and has a high level of kind of support, so people in these rural areas can add to this project in a way that doesn't have artificial technology barriers. And I thought that was fascinating, because you know, I'm on the end of the baby boomers, and even though I work in the technology business, my sons do things very differently than I do. And it's interesting that the federal government and also the community involved in this partnership with Georgia Tech is really recognizing that this is an area, and spending time and resources on this, and we are part of that project and part of that partnership. I thought that was particularly kind of an interesting thing that's being addressed by that project. So second is ATL Maps, Atlanta Maps. This is a project that we worked for several years now with Georgia State, and it's taking maps from the archives, maps from our library's archives, maps from the city archives, and bringing them in a digital way that can be layered on top of each other, and people can write their own stories and narrate them with any or all of these layers that they choose, and be able to save that story and go back to that story. And that can also be shared after some curation with the larger community. So when we started, it was kind of a way of people to bring up historic maps and write some scholarly articles about it, but it quickly evolved into a much stronger relationship with Georgia State in building this platform and populating it with collections from really all over the South. It's used now very, very extensively in classrooms both at Georgia State and at Emory, and other classrooms as well, as also been used by several researchers. So it's this partnership that kind of grew and grew, and is really allowing people to engage with hidden collections in a way that allows them to save and contribute to a larger conversation. The Readux platform, which is an open source platform that our center is developing, started out as a library only application, and was shelved many years ago for either a lack of interest or was not going to address their need. But when we had the idea, we had a faculty member come to us with this idea of being able to look at and read and annotate not linear and nonlinear text, and also to publish their own curated volumes with their annotations. So we rescued that application from on the shelf, and in partnership with our library colleagues, we then built this version of Readux, which is open and available for folks, which focuses on a lot of the things within Emory's collection, including some interesting documents from the Apollo 15 mission that have handwritten notes from the astronauts in the margins. So you can actually use this tool to look at those, read them, and make your own annotations to their nonlinear annotations, and be able to capture that and publish it via GitHub as your own annotated works. So we did this initially in partnership with a group at Wayne State University, and have now expanded that partnership to Princeton, and am now partnering with Stanford on the next version of this, which will allow a much more open-ended way to contribute collections to this. But without a lot of those things I spoke of about the partnerships and getting a lot of that understanding on both sides and having shared vision and being able to make sure that resources were allocated and all pointed in the same way. And then when you get to certain milestones, be able to understand that, hey, this thing we first started with didn't work, but we need to change direction and move to the second thing. This project would not have come about. So are partnerships easy all the time? The answer would be no, they're not. Sometimes they fit together very well, other times they don't. But there always has to be some effort and mutual understanding on how these work together. And I would argue when you form them and when you bring them together, the outcome, the whole is better than the parts. So by doing these things, you can create these wonderful resources. You can do things at different levels within your own libraries. But I would just welcome you to explore and experiment with some of these types of approaches when you're thinking, when a patron comes in with a wonderful idea and you want to work together. Maybe draw up a simple memorandum of understanding and let's work and have them work together and partner on an outcome. I think it would be an awesome experiment. So with that, I'm happy to look for questions, and also thank you so much for this opportunity to come and speak to the group. I certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Wayne. That was really cool. I want to learn more about that. The 2018 virtual conference is broadcasting live from the SEFLIN offices here in Boca Raton, Florida. We'd like to take a moment to thank our generous sponsors for supporting this event. Thank you to Overdrive and Florida State University. These sponsorships allow SEFLIN to bring this type of programming and more to all Florida library staff and others around the country and the world.